U.S. Carrier Strike Group retreats 500 miles. Iran's anti-ship missiles control the Gulf 500 miles. That's how far the USS Gerald R. Carrier Strike Group just repositioned away from the Strait of Hormuz. Not a routine patrol adjustment, not a scheduled rotation, a retreat. The most powerful naval formation in human history, can a $13 billion supercarrier surrounded by guided missile cruisers and destroyers, equipped with Aegis combat systems, backed by nuclear attack submarines, just moved 500 miles farther from Iranian coastline because remaining in the Persian Gulf became operationally untenable March 12, 2026. U.S. Naval Forces Central Command issued a brief statement confirming that Carrier Strike Group 12 had repositioned to support operations in the broader Middle East region. The statement didn't mention Iran, didn't mention threats, didn't mention the word retreat, but satellite imagery tells a different story. The Ford, which had been operating 150 miles off the Iranian coast in the central Persian Gulf, is now positioned 650 miles away in the Arabian Sea, well outside the range of Iran's coastal defense cruise missiles. This isn't tactical maneuvering. This is acknowledgement that the U.S. Navy can no longer operate safely in waters it has dominated since 1945. Let's be precise about what actually happened. Between March 8th and March 11th, Iran conducted what it called routine coastal defense exercises. The exercises involved live fire testing of 3 anti-ship missile systems: the Khalij Fars, anti-ship ballistic missile with a range of 300 kilometers, the Gator cruise missile with a range of 300 kilometers, and the Abu Mahdi missile, Iran's newest anti-ship cruise missile with an estimated range of 1,000 kilometers, and a sea-skimming flight profile that makes it nearly impossible to detect until it's 15 miles from the target. During these exercises, Iranian forces demonstrated the ability to launch coordinated saturation attacks using all 3 systems simultaneously against moving targets in the Gulf. They fired 47 missiles over 3 days. 41 hit their targets. That's an 87% success rate against targets simulating the radar cross-section and speed of American destroyers. U.S. naval intelligence watched every launch, tracked every missile, calculated intercept probabilities using current defensive capabilities, and concluded that a carrier strike group operating within 200 miles of the Iranian coast faces an unacceptable risk of catastrophic losses if Iran decides to engage. Here's the technical reality that forced the retreat. The USS Gerald R. Ford carries approximately 75 aircraft, including F/A-18 Super Hornets and F-35 Sea Lightning IIs. Those aircraft have a combat radius of roughly 500 miles. When the carrier was 150 miles off the Iranian coast, American strike aircraft could reach targets deep inside Iran and return with fuel reserves. Now, positioned 650 miles away, those same aircraft can barely reach Iran's coastline before they have to turn back. The carrier's offensive reach just got cut by 60%, but the defensive calculation is what actually matters. A carrier strike group's defensive perimeter is protected by a layered system. E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft that detect threats at 300 miles, SM-6 interceptor missiles on Aegis destroyers with a range of 250 miles, SM-2 missiles with a 90-mile range, and close-in weapon systems for terminal defense at ranges under 2 miles. This layered defense works when threats arrive individually or in small groups from predictable directions. It does not work against saturation attacks where 40-plus missiles arrive simultaneously from multiple azimuths at different altitudes and speeds. Let's walk through what a coordinated Iranian anti-ship attack would look like against a carrier strike group positioned 150 miles off the coast. Minute 0. Iranian coastal defense forces launched 20 Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missiles from mobile launchers dispersed along 400 kilometers of coastline. These missiles fly a semi-ballistic trajectory, reaching altitudes of 80 kilometers before diving toward the target at speeds exceeding Mach 5. Flight time to impact, approximately 6 minutes. Simultaneously, 15 Gator cruise missiles launch from coastal batteries and surface vessels. These missiles fly at 50 feet above sea level at subsonic speeds. Flight time to impact, approximately 12 minutes. 30 seconds later, 12 Abu Mahdi missiles launch from mobile launchers. These fly even lower, at 15 feet above the water, using terrain masking and GPS inertial guidance to stay below radar coverage until the terminal approach. Flight time to impact, approximately 14 minutes. The carrier strike group detects the ballistic missile launches immediately via satellite. E-2D Hawkeyes detect the cruise missile launches within 60 seconds. The Aegis combat system aboard the escorting cruisers and destroyers begins calculating intercept solutions. SM-6 missiles begin launching at the incoming ballistic missiles. Each Aegis cruiser carries 122 vertical launch cells. Each destroyer carries 96 cells. Not all of those cells contain SM-6 interceptors. Some carry Tomahawk cruise missiles, some carry SM-2 missiles for shorter-range threats, some carry anti-submarine rockets. A typical loadout might include 40 SM-6 missiles per cruiser and 24 per destroyer. The strike group has 3 destroyers and 1 cruiser. Total SM-6 inventory, approximately 112 missiles. The incoming threat is 47 missiles arriving in 3 waves, separated by minutes. Standard doctrine calls for launching 2 interceptors per threat to achieve high probability of kill. That requires 94 interceptors to engage 47 threats. The strike group has 112 available. The math works, barely. But here's where the math stops working. The Khalij Fars missiles are maneuvering during their terminal phase. Not dramatic course changes, small adjustments using thrust vectoring that makes their impact point unpredictable within a 200-meter radius. When you're firing a multi-million-dollar interceptor at a maneuvering ballistic missile, being off by 200 meters means missing entirely. The SM-6's kill probability against a maneuvering target drops from 85% to approximately 60%. Now you need 3 interceptors per threat to maintain high confidence. That's 60 interceptors just for the 20 ballistic missiles. You don't have 60, you have 112 total for all threats. You engage the ballistic missiles with 2 interceptors each because you don't have a choice. 40 interceptors fire, 12 ballistic missiles get destroyed, 8 get through. Those 8 missiles are now in terminal phase, diving at Mach 5 toward the carrier and its escorts. Close-in weapon systems activate. Phalanx guns on the carrier, CRAM point defense missiles on the destroyers. These systems engage threats inside 2 miles. They're designed for single targets or small groups, not 8 simultaneous impacts spread across 4 ships. 3 missiles hit the carrier, 1 hits the flight deck, cratering it and destroying 12 aircraft. 1 hits the island superstructure, killing 43 crew and disabling primary radar. 1 hits below the waterline, flooding 2 compartments. The carrier is not sinking, but it's not launching aircraft either. 2 missiles hit destroyers. 1 penetrates a destroyer's superstructure and detonates inside the operations center, killing everyone inside and leaving the ship dead in the water. The second destroyer takes a hit amidships, causing major fires but remaining operational. This is what happens from the ballistic missiles alone. The cruise missiles are still inbound. The strike group just expended 40 SM-6 missiles and multiple SM-2s on the ballistic threat. Remaining SM-6 inventory, 72 missiles. Remaining cruise missile threats, 27 missiles, now 8 minutes from impact. The Aegis system engages. SM-6 missiles launch toward the Gator cruise missiles that are flying at medium altitude and easier to track. SM-2 missiles engage the Abu Mahdi sea skimmers that are harder to detect, but closer range means more time for multiple engagement attempts. 18 cruise missiles get intercepted, 9 get through. Those 9 missiles are now inside 20 miles, traveling at 600 miles per hour, 15 feet above the water. The carrier's escorts reposition to shield the carrier with their own hulls. They're supposed to intercept the missiles before they reach the carrier. They intercept 5. 4 missiles hit. 2 hit the carrier, causing additional damage and fires. 2 hit the already damaged destroyer, sinking it. The attack is over. Duration? 14 minutes. Result? 1 $2 billion destroyer sunk, 1 carrier with major damage unable to conduct flight operations, 1 destroyer heavily damaged, 347 casualties. Iran's cost? 47 missiles at approximately $1 million each for the cruise missiles and $2 million each for the ballistic missiles. Total cost to Iran, roughly $87 million. U.S. losses, conservatively $6 billion in ships and aircraft, plus the strategic cost of losing a carrier's operational capability for 8 months of repair. That scenario is why the Ford is now 500 miles away. Not because U.S. commanders fear losing ships, because the mathematics of defensive saturation are absolute. Iran can fire more missiles than the carrier group can intercept, and the missiles cost less than the interceptors used to stop them. The carrier strike group's defensive magazine gets depleted faster than Iranian launch capacity. At 500 miles distance, Iranian coastal missiles cannot reach the carrier. The Khalij Fars and Gator have 300-kilometer range. The Abu Mahdi has 1,000-kilometer range, approximately 540 miles, which puts the Ford just outside its envelope. The carrier is now safe from coastal missile systems. It is also now irrelevant to the conflict, because at 650 miles from the Iranian coast, American aircraft cannot conduct sustained strike operations against Iranian targets. The carrier just became a $13 billion liability that has to be protected, rather than an asset that projects power. U.S. naval doctrine has not fundamentally changed since World War II. Carriers project power by positioning close enough to targets that aircraft can strike and return. Carriers survive by maintaining air superiority that prevents enemy aircraft from approaching, and by relying on escort ships to intercept occasional missile threats. This doctrine assumes the enemy has limited missile inventory and limited ability to track and target the carrier group at long ranges. Iran invalidates both assumptions. Iran's missile inventory is estimated at over 3,000 anti-ship missiles of various types. That's not a limited threat. That's an arsenal that can sustain saturation attacks for weeks. Iran's ability to track U.S. carriers comes from Chinese and Russian satellite data feeds, over-the-horizon radar systems positioned along the coast, and intelligence from maritime traffic and coastal observers. The carrier group cannot hide, cannot maneuver away from tracking, cannot avoid detection. The operational impact of the Ford's retreat extends beyond one carrier. The entire U.S. naval posture in the Middle East relied on the assumption that carrier strike groups could operate in the Persian Gulf and project power throughout the region. That assumption is now proven false. Every other carrier in the U.S. fleet faces the same threat. The USS Harry S. Truman, operating in the Mediterranean, has already adjusted its position to remain outside the range of potential threats from Syria and Lebanon. The USS Nimitz, en route to the Pacific, will not enter the South China Sea, where Chinese anti-ship ballistic missiles present an identical threat profile. The U.S. Navy just discovered it cannot operate its most powerful assets in contested waters against adversaries with modern anti-ship missiles. This is not a temporary problem that gets solved with better defensive systems. This is physics. Missiles are cheaper than interceptors. Attackers always have more missiles than defenders have interceptors. Defenders must achieve near 100% interception rates. Attackers only need 5% to get through to cause mission kill damage. The economic exchange ratio favors the attacker permanently. Share this, because mainstream coverage will show you the carrier strike group continuing operations in the region. They won't show you it's now 500 miles farther from the fight than it was 2 weeks ago. They'll say it's repositioning for operational flexibility. They won't say it's repositioning because remaining in the Gulf meant accepting unacceptable losses. Both are true. Only one explains why American naval power just lost access to waters it has controlled for 80 years. The missiles are in the water, the carriers are leaving, and the mathematics that forced the retreat are not changing.